I'm trying to get this happening, but it keeps cutting out. So let's have another go before we completely lose the light. So it just stopped again. Okay, I don't know if this will work. I keep cutting out for some reason. YouTube just keeps shutting down on me. So what I'm trying to do is return to this embroidery I started the other day. This stitch that I couldn't remember the name of is stem stitch and back stitch. So what I thought I'd quickly do is show you stem stitch. Let's zoom in on that a bit. It's not great clarity, is it? So what I was trying to show you with stem stitch, imagine this is the line that's printed on the linen, okay? And what I was doing was coming up here, so at the starting point I come up from the back of the linen with my needle and come out here. Then I go in here a little bit, and then in one movement I put the needle in this hole and then come up halfway between my exit and entry hole back this way. So I'm coming in and then coming back out there. So if I was to demo that, I need a large scrap cloth to show you, don't I? So let's just do a bit of a demo. I'll draw a line. How about that? I'll draw a line here, okay? I've just drew a line on the linen. It's not very clear, I'm sorry. And to do stem stitch, I've done a quilter's knot in the end of this. Now I come up at the beginning of that line where I want to start. I move my thread to the side. Now every time you do a stitch, you move your thread to the same side, whether it's top or bottom. It should be away from you every time. And then I come in along the line. I'm exaggerating this a bit, so that's probably 4 mil away from where I've come out. And then I'll come back up with the needle halfway between. So this is my exit hole where I've pulled it through. I do my entry about 4 mil away, and then I come back up halfway between those two stitches and then push the needle through and lay the thread flat. Again, lift that thread up and I come in. This time I'll only do 2 mil away, and I come back out through the hole that I went into last time. Pull the thread tight, and now I'm pulling it away from me again. Hold it upwards so it's always going in the same direction, so your stem stitch will lay flat. Come in about 2 mil away, come back up in that hole, last hole that you went into, not out of, into, and you come out of it. So essentially what you're doing is you come up here, you make a stitch, you go in the hole here, and then you come back out here. You then lay that stitch down, come in, and then come back out here. So essentially you're not actually overlapping. I'll do that again where you might be able to see it. It's terrible bloody light, isn't it? So you come up here, come out of your fabric at this point. I'll try and do it backwards so I'm not in the light. Your thread then goes in at this point. Your needle goes in here and then comes back out halfway along. You then go back in here and then come back out at this point. And you keep on moving. So essentially your stitches will look like they will be stacked on top of each other like this, but you will be following the drawn line. I hope that makes sense. I'm having trouble explaining what I mean, and the light is absolutely bloody horrendous. So let's try and zoom out a bit. So I'm going to cut this off because this isn't what I've gotten on to show you today. That was the stem stitch. Now I'll show you the quilter's knot if you don't know how to do that. Here's your needle. Here's the tail of your thread. Okay, you bring the needle and the tail towards each other like so. Lay them down beside each other and hold that tail and the needle in your dominant hand. In your non-dominant hand, do 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps around the needle. Now you want to hold those wraps in between your non-dominant hand, your thumb and your forefinger, and hold it just tight enough that you can push the needle through. Keep pinching that, and then you have a quilter's knot. Okay, again, I hope that you can see this because the light is atrocious. Now let's start on our tree, shall we? Now I'm going to come up, see this loop here and this loop here. Now I'm assuming they're a leaf on the branch of the tree. So I'm going to come up at the bottom where the point is, pull my thread through, hold it away from where I'm working. Now I'm going to put my needle back into that same hole that I just came out of, and I'm going to come up on the opposite end of that loop, and I'm going to make sure that this working thread is underneath the needle, and I'm just gently going to pull, not get it tangled around the fabric, gently pull that thread, and it will make a little chain. So then I will go my needle in on the opposite side of that loop, but in the same hole that we've come out of. So what I'm doing here is tacking down that loop with that thread. Now that is, I was going to say chain stitch, but I think it's actually a lazy daisy. I should have double checked that. I thought I knew. I should know by now. So I'll try and draw that. You come up, so this is the loop that's drawn onto the fabric. It's sort of that teardrop shape or leaf shape. You come up here, you bring your needle through from the back at the bottom of that loop. You hold your thread over here to the side, to the top of the work. You then put your needle back in that same hole, and it'll come up at the back of the work and come out here. You gently pull that thread through, making sure that this tail, this working thread that you have been holding here, is behind the needle when you pull it, and then you will tack that, the needle, when you've got that loop formed, when you pull it through, that thread, that tail that is now coming out of here, will go back in the same hole, but on the opposite side of that thread that you've just laid down. So that's your first leaf or lazy daisy stitch, and then we'll do it again on this side for the next leaf. We come up at the bottom of that leaf shape, pull the thread through gently, and again, as I said in the last video, this should ideally be done in a hoop, but I don't have a hoop small enough to fit this in. So as long as you don't pull your work too tight and pucker it up. So that, okay, I've brought that up, okay, there's that working tail of thread. I hold it away from me, out of the way. Now this needle is going back in that same hole that I just came up from, and under the work I will bring it out at the opposite side of that leaf. Now I want to make sure that this is under that needle when I pull it taut. Now gently do this, you don't want it puckered up, you want it to be sitting nicely. That's quite loose. You want it to just sit nicely on that drawn line, and then this working tail that we've just pulled out will go straight back in that same hole, but on the opposite side of that loop that you've just made, so you're tacking it into place. And there's your second leaf. So hopefully, now we've got a bit of a tail here. I don't like these tails, so I'm just going to snip that off, not too close to that quilter's knot or the knot will come unraveled. Snip that off and tidy it up a bit. Now my next closest leaf, that's actually a little bit too loose, so I'm just going to pull that a bit taut with my needle. See how I'm tightening that up, and then there we go, that's better. So my next closest leaf would be this one here. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this because I don't want to travel with my thread on the back, but I don't want to end it off and restart it because these leaves are quite sparsely spaced. That was a mouthful, or a tongue twister. So I'm assuming that this is a flower, this is a flower, and this is a flower. This one, this one, this one, this one will be leaves. These two up here will be leaves. And then we don't have any leaves until we get up here on either side. So yeah, I don't know. Ideally, I could travel, but I don't like that mess on the back. I could bring this, turn it over. I could do a bit of a whip stitch along that that stitch there, and then whip it up the back of this branch. So I'm just whipping the back of this stitch, and then I don't know if you can see through there, my leaf is going to be all the way up here, so I'm going to travel maybe 5 mil, and I really don't like traveling. There's several reasons. One of them is because you can see the shadow through the work. Another one is because it's untidy, and as I've mentioned before, I've always been taught to have the back of my work as neat as the front. I don't know how to do that. For me, that's a big travel. That's a big distance. So I might wrap this video up tonight because the light is getting really bad and you guys probably can't see much of what I'm doing. But I've got flowers around here and leaves, and then down here there's 1, 2, 3 flowers. I don't know if these are parts of leaves or parts of flowers or leaves. I'm going to assume that these two either side are flowers, partially like facing upwards flowers, and then all these little lines around here are grass. So the one that I'm doing using for my inspiration, this one here, it's not the same, but the grass that's on this one, if you can see it, is done in stem stitch as well. So I don't know, they're very short on here. Anyway, I will end that there because the lighting's gotten so bad that you guys probably can't see. I've used, as I said, stem stitch for the branches, for the trunk. For the branches I've used back stitch. And for the leaves so far, and probably for the flowers as well, I'm pretty sure it's lazy daisy stitch, but I will double check that. As I said, I've done this for so many times, and I've taught it that many times over the years. I should remember, but it's been a long time since I've done any, so I'm doubting myself now. Lazy daisy stitch. I will probably put French knots in the center of the flowers. Although I personally don't like French knots, so I may do colonial knots. And with any luck, I'll be able to work out a way to show you that on the monitor so you can actually see what I'm doing. So I hope that's been helpful. Next time I come back with the next stage, I'm hoping that I will have a better setup and the lighting will be better, so you'll be able to see more. I'm going to double check the names of those stitches to make sure I've got the right ones. And yeah, I did find in the last live I did, I've mentioned that I had a couple of doilies missing that I picked up today at the op shop. I have since found them. This is one of them, a little tray. It's very stained. A little tray cloth with very fine filling stitch or long and short stitch, and the back of these is almost as neat as the front. So that's another one that I got today. And then there were these two matching pair. They're linen. Again, they're quite stained too, and they're lovely, very neatly stitched. These are actually blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch, these flowers. Stem stitch and satin stitch, and again the back's almost as neat as the front. They've travelled a little bit in the back of this flower, but not much. That's not a travel, I don't think. That's a tail. Oh no, it is a travel. No, it's a tail. See, it lifts up. It's starched down. So they're just tails. Yeah, you can see on the flower, the back of that flower, they've travelled. Can you see across the back? They've travelled across here a few times. So ideally, they could have been tucked under that satin stitch, so you can't see them. I'd say that's what they've done on the others because they are quite neat. They've just forgotten to on that one. So there we go. That's what I'm up to. I hope that was of some assistance, even though the lighting was so poor. Thank you for joining me. I will be back again with some more. And as I said, hopefully I will be able to set it up so it's much clearer to see next time. Thanks once again for joining me.